Hello and welcome to week 3. So first off, there's been a lot of questions about late points and due dates and all those things. So due dates and late points are not, at least up till now, tightly connected. Meaning that there are things that are already past their due dates, but they have not yet have late points assessed. And that's because of late ads, etc. So just, if you're behind, you can catch up. You still need to do all the work. You can get 100% on something that was due 2 weeks ago. Okay? Until Friday, January 24th, late points are in effect auto-forgiven. After Friday, January 24th, they won't be auto-forgiven. And you might get like a 95 and be like, oh, I want my 100 because I was confused. No, we're not going to forgive them. They'll be like a little reminder to stay up and not wait to the last minute. But at the same time, I make them kind of tiny. The first assignments that are due on Friday have 5 points per day late. So 2 days late is still a 90%. Now, I might increase those numbers as the semester continues. You won't know what the late points are until after you start working on an assignment late. It might be 5%, might be 10%. You don't know. Don't fall behind. This is all part of my plan for you not to fall behind in this class. If there's one thing that bothers me is everybody says, oh, I'll fall behind and catch up later. That's fine in a writing class or a history class or whatever. It's just not fine in a programming class. So, you know how I said a couple weeks back that there will be no A pluses in this class? I've changed my mind. I'm going to, as an experiment this semester, I'm going to use the health tool that you can see in Sakai course overview to give the healthiest 5% of the class A pluses. So, what's health? Start early. Finish early. Don't use too many tries. Don't use too many tries on the autograder. Don't use too many tries on the quizzes. So that's what you'll do. It's not precise, and you're in a sense competing with everybody else in the class. So A's are not on a curve. Points are points, end of story. If everyone in this class gets an A, that's fine with me. If you get above, whatever, 92 from the syllabus. But A pluses are on a curve. And A pluses are how well you rock the class while earning high grades. Okay? So I've never done it before. This is an experiment this semester. So I've got some questions about grades and due dates and confusion. The only way that you will know about due dates is to check Canvas and check your grades all the time. The Canvas has this weird problem that it treats a blank grade, even after the due date, as 100%. And that can give you this sense like, ooh, this is a great class. I don't have to do any homework and I get an A. And the answer is no. Because after the due date, I go in and manually set all the blank grades to zeros. And you'd be like, ooh, I just got a 0 on this class and this assignment. Yup. You didn't get a 0. You can still do it. And you'll get like, if it's after the due date, you'll get like a 90 or 95 or 85 or something like that. But just don't look at your overall 100% in Canvas because that underrepresents the missing grades. So also, if you see a lot of missing grades or you start getting zeros, you need to check your Canvas grades because we are using 3 different systems in this class. We're using Canvas, which is where your grades are at and where everything starts and all the other courses that you're taking are. Sakai, which is where all the content is. And then some of the autograders are on the djforee.com. Now, some of you may look at the autograder and you might think, oh, great, I can see the URL that is the autograder. And then you just go to that website and you think, oh, I'll figure that out. And that website has lots of things. This website is used to support our Canvas class. It's used to support Coursera. It's used to support courses all around the world in Moodle. And people can just take these courses. So after you leave the university, you can come back and review anything that's from this course. But if you log in here with an @umich.edu, you're not going to get your grades back to Canvas. You have two accounts. One is the account called person who came from Canvas account, and the other is just a DJ free global account. So do not do your homework. So we try to keep an eye on people who end up in the class but not getting any grades. And so just don't go directly to DJ free. And I know that you got 3 tabs open and one tab will tell you to log out. Just close the tab. The Sakai thing will log you out after like 30 minutes, and the DJ free will log you out after 18 minutes. Or you close your laptop and open it back up. Don't worry about all that. Just close those tabs and open them back up so that your grades are properly flowing. So we're in week 3 of the first 5 weeks of the course. The first 5 weeks of the course are like you travel to a new city and you arrive, and on your first day you take a day-long guided bus tour. And you're in a bus and you're driving around, and somebody, their tour guide says, oh, that's the Supreme Court building, and that's the Washington Monument, and that's this, and now we're going over this bridge, it's a famous bridge, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And you're like, whoa. And that's what we're doing right now. We are going on a guided bus tour of a Django application and a guided bus tour of web technologies. And so if you're a little bit like, whoa, none of these weeks have really related to the previous week or the next week, that's normal in the first part of this class because we're just taking you on a tour of everything. Now, I have a picture that shows up in most lectures that I call the big picture document. The big picture is all the things that you're going to learn in these first 5 or 6 weeks and how they relate together. Now, you're not going to understand this whole big picture until the end of the guided bus tour, and it all starts falling together. So I'll just keep coming back to this and keep coming back and telling you what we're working on. So let's take a look at the bus tour. So this is the picture of the Django environment. The Django environment is an object-oriented environment, and when you build urls.py, you're actually defining sort of data that is being populated into an object. So in mysiteurls.py or mysitesettings.py or the urls.py in polls, for example, or the views.py in polls, those are configuring Django based on what you want Django to do, because Django is a flexible framework and you are telling it how you want to work. And so this picture is how Django applications are put together. And the file that starts everything is this settings.py file. And again, we just tell you to edit this file. But let's sort of take a quick look at this settings.py file. Starts things up inside of Python Anywhere, and then settings.py associates and sets all the rest of these things up. So I've got my application. I have more things because I keep all versions of the polls running simultaneously. I'll just think a little bit about the first one. You'll be doing different things as you progress. But I love the fact that this is page not found. But what's going on here is it's not just that the page is not found. It's telling you what it was trying to do to find it. And so yours will pretty much say admin polls and then sites for now. But this is actually telling you a whole bunch of stuff. When it says the URL configuration defined in my site URLs, it's really my site /urls.py. This is the name of the object that urls.py gets turned into. So if we take a look at our files, let's go to another one, go to files, take a look at our files, and we go into Django projects, my site, and settings.py. This file that you've edited, you put the host in, and you'll be putting like polls apps, polls config in, and all kinds of things. A lot of this stuff you've got and you haven't changed, but this is the file that defines to Python Anywhere the structure of your application. And yours will probably say Django 4. I haven't changed this file in a long time. I am running Django 4.2, but the file, I'm using a file from Django 3.01 so long ago. So if we go back to the big picture, settings.py is fed into Python Anywhere. And let me show you in Python Anywhere under the Web App tab where that happens. Now, hopefully you've got all this working, okay? But if you go down, we're in this Web tab in Python Anywhere, we're basically saying, Dear Python Anywhere, when you receive a request for Dr. Chuck, pythonanywhere.com, this is the application that I want you to run to respond to that request. So if we look at the big picture, a request comes in, and it is to drchuck.pythonanywhere.com, and so it's going to run my Django application. So that is set up in this file. So if you recall some time ago, on the very first assignment, I told you to wipe this file out and I gave you this text. But what's going on now is this is your home directory for this application, Django Projects My Site, and then the settings to define this are My Site settings. Now again, this is in the form of like an object name. If this were a file, it'd be mysite/mysite/settings.py, which then gets loaded into an object called mysite.settings. And so that's where, you know, if you look here, you see that's kind of the name of a module, right? MySite URLs and MySite, not there, MySite settings. Those are modules after they get loaded, but they get loaded from a file like mysite/settings.py. And this basically says, when we're starting this application up, start this Django code up and run it, and then route them to this. So when it says the WSGI application, that is how incoming requests informed by settings.py and WSGI config lead to it showing up in your application. And then the first thing that's checked in your application is urls.py. Once we're here at drchuckpythonanywhere.com, we have been into our application. And then urls.py, or the module MySite URLs, that's what's going to tell us for the rest of the path. So if I go like /abc, the first part of this path has been negotiated to get into my code. And as a matter of fact, if you look at the rest of this, it's telling what directory to go into, and so these are just your directories, right? And what virtual environment to run in that directory and to load all this stuff up. And then the next thing that happens is urls.py. So mine's got a few more than yours does. And so all up to this slash at pythonanywhere.com / that says get me into the right application. And then this /abc is reading through mysiteurls.py and looking to see if there is a piece of code that responds to that URL pattern. Okay? And it says, hey, I didn't find that either. There is no /abc. I looked in your urls.py. I found admin, I found polls, I found site. You'll only have those three. Okay? But now if I go like, oh, /admin, there is something there, right? And so there is something there. And if I take a look at my urls.py, you see that basically says when we encounter within our application, after drchuckpythonanywhere.com / if I have an admin there, then I have a set of URLs that are appended into the namespace below that. And the same is true for polls. So if I go into /polls, then I'm going into the polls application. So this urls.py, mysite urls.py, includes polls URL. And again, this is a file that's mysite /polls/urls.py, but as kind of a module, once that gets imported, it turns into a module named polls.urls. So that's in my site polls urls.py. And then that tells us, after we've got it to /polls, how do we route the rest of this URL, right? Polls is in the polls application within our Django project. And it's like, no, I didn't find a polls ljk. There is a polls by / and polls /owner, but not that thing. So I can say polls by itself and get a file, and I can say polls /owner. So that's all the possible paths, and those paths are defined. And so these paths start. So if we have this https drchuckpythonanywhere.com, polls gets us into this file, and then within this file, the next thing that's on the URL is what's going on. Okay, and so back to the big picture. So I just showed you how settings is your arrangement with Python Anywhere to get your application running and associate with a domain name. urls.py is all the different folders, applications that are in your Django project. And urls.py for each of your Django applications says which of the views to select. So now if I take a look at, views.index, that is a function now. I'll go ahead and save that. And if I look at polls views.py, now again, views.index here, that's again a module syntax, but it is my site /polls /views.py. And that becomes an imported module at this point. And in here, we're adding a function named index with taking a parameter of the request. And what is this request? Well, if we look here, there is a whole bunch of data that's coming from the browser and being handled by Django and handed into our view. So it goes into views.py. And so then we have to return a response, which is an object that we're constructing with we're just making the default text object. We're going to do a lot more fun things with this response object later. But for now, we're just making some text, which is going to be printed out right here. Now, the weird thing here is that we've got two ways to get at the same piece of the application. If we have nothing after polls, like polls /nothing, it goes to views.index. And if we have polls /owner, it also goes to views.index. And that's why I can say polls and polls /owner. Okay, so that is urls.py and views.py. And so that's mostly what we've been doing up to this point, except, of course, if we look at the my site urls.py, the entry that I just gave to you, this one here, the RE regular expression path, this is basically saying if it matches a certain pattern, it's called regular expression. And that is, it starts with a site / and then we're going to extract a path, little parentheses. This is a thing called regular expressions. You can go Google regular expressions. You can ask ChatGPT, what is this regular expression? Hey, let's go to ChatGPT. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to take this regular expression, which is the part inside the single quotes, and say, explain what the regular expression is doing. And it turns out that ChatGPT loves regular expressions. People love them, programmers love them, they're very, very powerful. But sometimes it's hard to memorize all the rules of ChatGPT. So all the rules of regular expressions, and I love using ChatGPT to tell us. It says, asserts the start of the string, matches the literal string site. This is a named capturing group, that's what the parentheses, blah, blah, blah. Going to create a variable named path. 0 more except a new line for the string site page 1. The regex will match it, and capture page 1 is the name group path. If it's site subdirectory file HTML, capture this in the root path. And what we're doing is we're doing this and then calling the calling this serve operation with that path. And that's how we have been doing all of the HTML and CSS. It just says take whatever we've got after this and pass it into this serving application, which then reads files off the disk and shows them to you. And so that's how you have been doing the HTML and CSS applications. We've been working with settings, URLs, MySite URLs, polls views, and some static files, which are not, the site is not shown here. But up next, we're going to talk about database models and database migrations and models.py, etc., etc. And so we still got some weeks to go. We're about halfway through the bus tour of all of this stuff. So let's go back and take a look at what we're going to do next week. So next, you did HTML and CSS, and most of you have seen some of that, or you haven't, but a lot of people have seen HTML and CSS, certainly HTML. We're going to talk about like SQL, and then we're going to connect that to Django data models, which is a way of auto-generating SQL. So in this course, we're only going to use SQL a little bit. We hide SQL behind a concept called a Django model. We're using an SQL database, but Django's writing the SQL for us. But at this point in the course, I want you to know some SQL, so you can start making the connection as to what Django is doing to write SQL for you. So let's take a look at our content. Week 3. We have 2 basic topics, just like the pattern that we've been doing. There's just an SQL module, and this part has nothing to do with Django. And so we've got a total of 20, 32, 40 minutes. So you're literally going to learn SQL, even if you've never used it before, in 30 minutes. That's one of the things I love about SQL. And then you have a quiz, and you have an autograder where you got to run some SQL commands in the Linux shell, which is something you already learned. And so this is pretty straightforward. I'm going to guess that some of this you'll watch fast, and some of this you'll slow down. And so this is pretty straightforward, and I think you'll enjoy this. Then the next one is a little bit harder, Django data models. So you'll see it's a little harder. So we got 20, 28, 39, 46 minutes, almost an hour of stuff. And you probably want to watch this slowly. It's not very fun material. It's kind of dense, but watching it will really help you. You've got to do this tutorial 2, which is data model. There's a quiz on tutorial 2, and so this will cause you to do some data model work in Django. So that's pretty much what we got going for next week. SQL and Django tutorial 2. I would say the SQL is the easier part, and the Django tutorial part is the harder part. But just kind of get ready for it. And other than that, come to office hours, come to my 9 to 11 or 1 to 3 office hours. Help a lot of people then. Homework is due Friday at midnight, and you got 4 hours of me every single Friday, just about all day long. So hope to see you in class. Cheers.